years I've worked with quite a few species of whales and dolphins, but for the last 15, 20 years or so, I've become intensely interested in killer whales.
Killer whales are fascinating animals at the very top of food chains, pack hunters with great degree of learning.
Right now, officially, there's one species of killer whale in the world, but there's at least a half a dozen very different looking types out there, and I think any one of them could be a different species. So since around the year 2000, we have described 4 different types of killer whales from Antarctic waters, and in 1955 there was a stranding in New Zealand of 17 killer whales, and they were very different looking killer whales. They had a big round head, a very tiny little eye patch. The dorsal fin was kind of narrow and very pointy and swept back. No killer whales like that had ever been seen before.
So interestingly, after the stranding occurred in New Zealand, there were no more reports of those types for decades.
And then exactly 50 years later, the French researcher was showing me some photographs, and I'll never forget this. They had the little tiny eye patch and the round head, and I said, those are the New Zealand killer whales. It was astonishing to see that these animals were alive, and I knew immediately what they were. So as part of our Antarctic killer whale research, we started collecting photographs of killer whales in the Southern Ocean to get an idea about how these different types were distributed, and the locations were very interesting. The type D killer whales didn't quite get into Antarctic waters, which is why we had so few records of them, because they live in some of the nastiest water in the world. So we had described types A, B, and C's, and for the first time we called it type D killer whale. And then a colleague of mine sent me some photographs of type D killer whales around a toothfish vessel fishing off Cape Horn. And he said there'd been a number of sightings in a rather narrow area. Once I got that information, I knew that this was probably the best place in the world where we could go to look for this animal.
So right from the beginning, we knew that this expedition was a long shot. We were hoping for just a few good weather windows.
Where we were off Cape Horn, you're either in a storm or you're between storms.
We spent 8 straight days at anchor in 40, 50, 60 knots of wind. It was so bad that we couldn't even get ashore.
After our 8 days at anchor, the captain said, you know, it looks like there's going to be a break here between these 2 storm fronts. We might be able to get a few hours out there.
And so we decided to pull anchor. We fought our way out to the location in very heavy weather. The next morning was our weather window. We got up at 5 in the morning, and shortly after that, there they were, type D killer whales.
And to tell you the truth, there was just a moment of, oh my God, there they are. And then we immediately went into our roles as killer whale biologists and the mission that we had at hand there.
We wanted to get underwater acoustic recordings because killer whales are very vocal, and these different ecotypes are known to have distinctive vocalizations. We were also able to get hundreds and hundreds of photographs. And these are important because killer whales are one of the species that are individually identifiable based on unique shapes and markings on the dorsal fin, the saddle patch.
But the most important thing that we wanted to do was to get tissue biopsy samples of these killer whales. We got the first ever sample from type D killer whale. Maybe the answer to our questions right here.
So our next step is to analyze these skin and blubber biopsy samples in our molecular genetics laboratory. This will tell us how distinct these type D killer whales are from other killer whales, and we're very excited about the results of that analysis.
And this is important stuff. If you're going to do conservation work on anything, the first thing you have to know is how many species you're dealing with. And just to think that there's a whole new killer whale out there that looks completely different, it's like, yeah, we need to look closer at what we have out here.